110 is a great number. I hereby officially kickstart our session. Hi and good evening, good afternoon, good morning again. My name is Lina Li. I'm the China coordinator at the ICAP Secretariat. And today I have the great honor to moderate our session with a great line of experts. And I would also like to use the opportunity to thank our co-organizer, International Emissions Trading Association. My colleague Li Ming unfortunately has encountered some technical issues and that she could not join us and give the opening remarks on their behalf. And I would like to then start by referring back to earlier session of the pavilion, which is a plenary session happened a few hours ago, where Kevin Rudd, the ex-Prime Minister of Australia, has attached great significance to the new announcement of President Xi Jinping that China will achieve its carbon neutrality by 2060. He also further mentioned that China is actually in the process to looking into detailized and incorporating this longer-term vision into the upcoming 14th five-year plan. And the world is watching China and has been watching China for the past couple of years as the country is in great work of preparing for the world's largest carbon market. And today, I think we are at a good moment following the momentum that I was just referring to. And we have, as I said, a great line of experts. Together, our four panelists and our keynote speaker actually represent more than half a century of experience that is related to China's carbon market journey. We all played our role alongside this journey where China started by exploring and then testing and now taking more further steps, entering a more robust national system of carbon emission trading, starting with the power sector. And with that, I would like to firmly welcome you to join us. And before giving the floor to Professor Duan Maosheng, which is our keynote speaker today, I would like to announce a few housekeeping rules. First of all, in case you have any technical issues throughout the session, please contact my colleague Maya. And secondly, we will and we are recording the session already, and we plan to upload it on the Pavilion website after this session in order to benefit our discussion for broader audience. And the third point, which is actually the most important one, is throughout session, please send your questions throughout the chat or Q&A box. And when you are doing so, please also introduce your name, affiliation, and to which speaker your question are addressed. We will monitor and feed in your questions into the Q&A session later on. So now, with further ado, I would like to introduce our keynote speaker of the session. Professor Duan Maosheng is one of the most prominent carbon market experts of China. He is the head of China Carbon Market Center of Tsinghua University. He has been working on carbon markets since 2000 and a member of the Chinese climate delegation since 2001, responsible for issues related to market-based mechanisms. He has been intensively involved in the design and operation of China's domestic carbon market, including both the pilots and the national emission trading systems. His latest assignments, including coordinating drafts of the rules of China's upcoming national carbon markets. So Professor Duan, it's our great honor and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lina, for your introduction and also invitation. It's really a great pleasure to give you some brief information about the latest development as well as the long-term opportunity and challenges in China's national emissions trading system development and operation. Can we have the next slide? I mean, we have quite a few very great panelists, so I think they will later on provide to you some latest developments. So I will be very, very brief about the current status. First, I mean, we are at the final stage of the development, and we have collected the historical data from 2013, and allocation approaches for the power generation sector have been proposed and tested, and I guess they will be finalized in the near future. And our national ETS registry and trading system development is at the final stage. And in 2018, I mean, there was a government restructure in China, and the ETS authority has been shifted to the new ministry, the Ministry of Ecology and the Environment. So additional capacity building have been conducted for those stakeholders who have not received relevant capacity building in the past. And we are seeing I mean, my personal opinion is that, well, the start of the operation of a national system is looming. I mean, after some negative impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. Can we have the next slide? I will mainly touch upon the challenges and opportunities. I mean, first, even the China's national system will be start operation in the near future. I mean, I still think we will need to continuously improve the system design. I mean, it's because system ETS operates not in vacuum, and its design must coordinate with other policies to achieve the efficiency improvement expected by the stakeholders. And I mean, we see all the existing emissions trading system are under continuous improvement to accommodate the impacts of evolving policy context. I mean, those impacts include, for example, the development of domestic policies. If you take China as an example, I mean, as you just mentioned, our president has just announced our enhanced mitigation or new mitigation target. So I mean, when we design or improve our national system, we need to consider those new or enhanced mitigation target, and also we need to coordinate with the renewable energy and energy efficiency policies. And we know that those policies will also be evolving. And there are also many other industrial development policy. For example, we have the phase out policy for the overcapacity. And I mean, that's the first point. The second point is that, well, we are also seeing some international challenges. For example, we see a development of emission trading system in other jurisdictions. And we also are seeing proposed border carbon adjustment measures by the European Union. I mean, when we develop or improve our national system, what we need to take into account all those evolvement of the international challenges. And third, I think when we review or improve our national system design, we need to take into account the responses of the covered sectors to the system. Because I mean, at the initial stage, even you have conducted a lot of studies, you will never know what were the actual responses of the covered sectors. And also, I think, I mean, efficiency improvement requires assessment. I mean, I think that's a basic requirement if you wish to improve the efficiency of the system. And next slide. And for China, I mean, one very important issue we need to consider is to the enhanced mitigation target. I mean, in the current design of our national system, I mean, the characteristics of China's current overall mitigation target have been fully taken into account. For example, China's current mitigation target is an intensity-based target. So in China's national system design, I mean, we will have an intensity-based de facto emissions cap. We will not have an absolute cap at the very beginning. And also, but now we have the new enhanced 2030 mitigation target, and also the new 2060 target. I mean, then my personal view is that, well, we need to transit from an intensity-based target to an absolute control target as soon as possible. Next slide. And also, at the very initial stage of China's national system operation, so basically free allocation approaches will play a dominant role. I mean, I don't know whether there will be auctions or not, but I mean, even there will be auction, I think they will play a very, very minor role. So my, well, for sure, we understand such kind of design because when you need to do some political compromise. I mean, at the very beginning, I think what is important that while you kickstart the system as early as possible, as long as there is no significant kind of flaw in the system design. I mean, we fully understand that, but I mean, if we wish to give full play of the ETS, auction should be given more importance, and well, we hope that auction can play a more important role in the near future. I think this is very important in terms of both achieving the domestic mitigation target, but also addressing the challenges imposed, for example, by the border carbon adjustment measures. I think that's one issue. And well, if we are going to use auction, I mean, for sure, one connecting question is, well, we are going to have some revenues. So how we are going to use those revenues? So my opinion is that, well, a large part of the revenues should be earmarked for mitigation purpose. I think this is especially important in China, because I mean, in China we have very strict rules on how the revenues can be used. I mean, generally, if there's no earmark, so basically it will go to in the general public budget. Next slide, please. And when we design our national system, I think we need to balance the long-term policy certainty and the flexibility needed to accommodate the changes. Long-term policy certainty is very important. It's even as important as the stringency of the allocation approaches. We know allocation approaches will affect the interest of the covered entities. I mean, they are very, very important. But I think long-term policy certainty is as important as that. I mean, we have done some questionnaire survey, and our response, I mean, the response from the covered entities is that, well, sometimes they do care the carbon price at the current stage, but at the same time, they also care very much the long-term policy certainty. But well, as I explained earlier, I mean, China's national ETS will need to coordinate with many other evolving policies. So flexibility is needed to accommodate the evolving policy context. So I mean, how can we balance those two kinds of need? I think maybe the one possible approach is that, well, first, we need to have a very strong legal basis to ensure that, well, the emissions trading system will exist for the long term, and also we need to define in the legal basis some basic characteristics of the system design. For example, how the cap will be set, how the allocation approaches will evolve, and what the MRV requirement will be, and what the compliance rule will be. But I mean, at the same time, we also need to give some flexibility to the ETS authority, because I mean, I don't think you can always change the very basic legal basis in order to accommodate the evolving policy. Next slide, please. Another very important issue I say in our national system design is a division of responsibility between the central government and the provincial government regarding mitigation. I mean, currently, we have, for example, in China as a whole, we have a national mitigation target. And in the past, basically, the central government will divide the national target into provincial targets. So basically, it's a for the provinces, their targets are economy-wide targets. But I mean, this is one thing. On the other hand, we also need to understand that, well, the national emissions trading system will cover those major emitting entities, and the provincial authorities, I mean, they rely very much on the mitigation activities by those covered entities to achieve their provincial target. I mean, so you say there are, but in our national system design, uniform the rules will be implemented But for the provincial mitigation target, the overall, the economy-wide target, I mean, they are differentiated. So there are different targets for different provinces. So you will see some conflicts. I mean, on the one hand, there are differentiated targets for each for provinces, different provinces. On the other hand, you will implement uniform system design for the national system. So basically, I mean, we see some possible conflict here. And I mean, I think in the European carbon market, I mean, there were similar issues in the past. So I think maybe one possible way out is that just like what is happening in the European Union. I mean, the provinces are only responsible for the mitigation target, covering the non-ETS entities. I mean, the ETS entities will be managed directly by the central government. I think this is my last slide. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Professor Duan. This is, as always, a very informative and far-reaching input. And taking advantage of my moderation role, I would like to follow up with two-folded questions, and then I will also see if we have some questions from the audience. I know you will need to leave us shortly, so my question actually links back to your point 3 and point 4, and thanks for providing that long-term perspective and also anchoring the ETS in the broader China climate policy framework. So for the power sector, which will be the first sector, what do you think will be the parameters that the government will need to look into when design and further improve the system for the decarbonization and of the power sector? And the second part of my question is then to looking into beyond the power sector. We were also hearing from the statements of MEE that there are still this plan to expand the ETS to other industrial sectors. So could you also give us some of your thinking on how this longer term roadmap of expansion of the ETS in China might look like? Thanks.
Thank you, Lina, for your question. On the power sector, we know that currently China is in the process of reforming the power sector. So basically, I think there are a lot of reforms, but I think one very, very important policy that in the past, how much electricity can be generated by one entity is basically determined by the authority. And then I think now they are trying to determine the quantity of electricity to be generated by the entity through market competition. So, I mean, this is something we need to consider, because currently the free allocation approaches for the power sector is basically, we call it a real output based benchmarking approach. So basically, I mean, how many free allowances you can receive really depends on the actual electricity you will generate, right? But I mean, that kind of design was provided, I mean, you also accommodated with the current practice. But I mean, when we have the new competition in the power market, I think maybe we can shift more to auction or even historical output based. I mean, it's just my personal opinion. And on other sectors, for sure, I mean, the authority, I think they understand very well the efficiency improvement that can be achieved by the emission trading system really depends on the mitigation cost differences across the different sectors, across different entities within one sector. I mean, they understand this very well. So I think they are trying to speed up the preparation work for other sectors to be included in our national system. You know that was in the past, they have already proposed free allocation approaches for 2 other sectors, and they have already tested the proposed approaches. I mean, I think they are as eager as us, I mean, to cover more sectors in the near future.
Thanks. There were a few questions coming in through the Q&A session, and I'm selecting, I think, 3 of them for the next round. First of all is what is the role of China's certified emission reduction, CCRs, likely to be in the national ETS? This comes from Benjamin Rizzo from Vivid Economics. following that, I guess a lot of participants are curious about what do you think would be the time when the national ETS might be launched? Is this going to be up and running ahead of COP26? 26? And the very last one is also an interesting and challenging one. What are your thoughts? And by the way, the previous question comes from Jimmy Dorgan, and the next one comes from Mary Helmish. Thank you very much for the informative presentation. And the question is about linking perspectives for China's ETS with other international systems. So I will leave you with these three for now.
I mean, I don't know when their system will start operation, but I think, yeah, I think that the expectation for sure, I mean, is we will start the system as soon as possible. And I mean, as I said, we are at the final stage, but I mean, I don't know the exact date of operation of our national system. For other sector, I mean, as I said, I mean, they have already done a lot of preparation work, but I mean, again, I mean, I'm not sure, but I think this will also depend on the operation of the system when the power generation sector is first introduced. I mean, if the system operates very well with no significant flaws, I think this will provide some confidence to the authority to include more sectors in the near future. I think. I mean, so what are the other questions?
The role of CCER and the prospective.
Yes, CCER. Yes, yeah. The CCER system was stopped operation 2-3 years ago, and my understanding that was they are trying to improve the some rules regarding the system, and I think they wish to restart the CCER system as soon as possible. Again, I mean, because it touches upon the shift of the authority, it's a little bit complicated. So I think it will take some time, but I think they're trying very hard to restart the system.
Thank you. I look at the clock. I think you need to leave us in 2 or 3 minutes. I just pick up 2 more questions from the questions that has been submitted. One is to specifically asking your opinion about aviation sector within the context China's national ETS. And the second one is more broadly on the climate policy of China. We know 14th five-year plan is coming. How would the criteria be used to implement or define the national target into the provincial targets?
Well, for the civil aviation sector, I mean, for sure, this is one of the 8 sectors we talked a lot in the past, but we also understand that, well, this sector is very special and compared with other sectors. So I think there are a lot of special issues to be addressed. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I have no idea when that will be included, but I mean, we will include that sector as long as the special issues will be addressed. And on the criteria, I mean, I don't know, but the issue that, I mean, we have a new 2030 target, and that's the midterm target, and then we must have a roadmap to achieve that, right? And you know that China always, I mean, China wishes to have a very clear roadmap. I'm sure they will consider the new 2030 target very seriously in the new 5-year plan, and we know that, well, there will be a new 5-year plan for climate change. So basically, that's a good news.
Thanks for ending your notes with the good news, and we will all watch that, which will come sometime next year. And thanks again for joining us today in your late evening and for making your time and sharing with us your insights. We look forward to continuous exchange with you. And now I would like to move our session to the next part, which is a panel discussion. And we have 4 really distinguished panelists. I would like now to introduce our first panel speaker. She is Mrs. Xiaowu Zhao. She is the Senior Manager for Global Climate at Environmental Defense Fund, EDF, and she is responsible for the strategic design of the programs related to climate change initiatives in China, especially on the carbon pricing policies. I know from my personal and professional interactions with her that she has really supported and accompanied China's journey throughout the piloting phase now to the preparation for the national ETS launch. So Xiaolu, please share with us your insights on the prospects of the national ETS. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you for the invitation to this wonderful event, especially we're closing to the end of this year and everybody is talking about the question. So I actually have been given a question about, with a specific focus on our research work related to ETS and power sector and what we think, or what are our key recommendations to ensure the ETS is effective for power sector. So I've been prepared a little bit around that work. Because one thing I want to share, actually, we have done a lot of modeling research. One of them is on the power sector. It's with a specific focus on power sector. It's not surprised that the results shows that carbon ETS can effectively reduce a company's emission reduction cost. But also another result out of this research is indicating that the sooner a carbon market launched, the less emission reduction cost will be achieved. So which means because without a carbon market, technical emission reduction means will be chosen because China has already set out a lot of emission reduction or climate change goals. So which correspondingly increase the reduction cost if we don't have emission market sooner. So as a result, carbon markets or markets' power to reduce the whole society's emission cost will be diminished. So which is our core recommendation is that we need to have a carbon market sooner to avoid this market liquidity to be harmed and to avoid our increased overall carbon emission cost. So other than that, we've been seeing a lot of, because we've been working with a lot of industry association, as a lot of you have been communicate with. So a lot of things we heard is we really need a long-term, a very clear and a very stable climate goal and ETS goals. Or what is the ETS roles in this such a climate goal? So right now we already have part of it. And also this is very important, or the certainty is very important for any enterprises to make long-term decisions or make any investment. And also as what Professor Duan talked about, a solid legal foundation is really needed. And actually, luckily, we already seen that. Just not far, like days ago, the ME Climate Change Department just issued this ETS registration, trading, and settlement management regulation, which the public consultation actually ends today. And another one is the public consultation for the 12 carbon emission trading management regulation, which will be ending December 1st. I think that's actually a very positive sign for us to have some understanding of how Chinese carbon market will be and to have more confidence that we'll have a market very soon. And also EDF, we've already done the translation of this regulation and we'll send out this English version through our China ETS newsletter. And all of your comments are welcomed and we will consolidate this comment, translate them and submit them to the MEE. And also the third one is we think to include more industry sectors as soon as possible is very important. For example, we already work with the China Building Material Federation to organize a ETS test run on cement sector this May. So around 285 companies participated. So the entire test run or simulation is based on 2017 and 2018 true emission data. So the total emission covered by this 200, close to 300 company are equals to the same of California carbon market. So all of these companies go through the entire process of free allocation, auction, secondary market trading, compliance cycle. So because of this practice, it's not only given the industry associations more confident that they can get included into the national market sooner, but it actually helped a lot from the participants feedback that this company, this readiness building is helping them to understand what carbon market is, to help them not afraid of trading, to let them better understand there's more choices to reduce emissions. And fourth is that, we all know that climate change department, especially the domestic unit, is super busy. They're not only working on carbon market alone, so there's a lot of other issues they're working on. So right now, in order to accelerate the building and designing and implementing of national carbon market in China, I think we should include more parties into this. NCS is definitely one of the major help, and industrial associations could be another a really important role that we can rely on, because all of these industry associations in China are not like trade associations. They are semi-government bodies, so they could provide, like CEC, China Electricity Council, they actually got entrusted by the Climate Change Department in 2018 to provide technical support to the national ETS, like allocation methodologies, benchmarks, MRV guidelines, trade rules, and so on. So I think including, and also they've done a lot of about training materials development, help the major power companies set up design designated team on carbon asset management, things like that. So we could, I think, include incorporating other sector or industry associations acting like CECs could accelerate this process. But of course, the decision maker should be Climate Change Department of MEE, of course. So that's basically what's the point I want to cover. Thank you.
Thanks, Xiaolu. I have made a lot of notes as you were touching upon several very important points, and I wanted to get back first on the power sector. You have mentioned some of your recent work and what you see as important. One important thing also is the stringency of the benchmark levels. And we know that's quite contentious issue, but what would you think would be the way forward? Previously, we heard some of the experts saying that it will start from a moderate level, but then it will increase the stringency year on year or something. What is the current thinking then on this? How we can ensure that the benchmarks are really set at stringent level, and we will see some level of mitigation and also a relatively active market?
Mm-hmm. I think that's a really good question. I'm not actually involved in the benchmark setting of this, but I think all of the experts are talking exactly like what you said. We are improve the stringency through time. And also I think one of the reasons I want to incorporate more sector as soon as possible is that we all understand the mitigation technology cost of power sector alone is very high. So frankly, I don't think the carbon price of China in recent years could cover this cost. So this is my idea. I think from the beginning, carbon market of China should be focusing more on how to operating well, how to be a market with, for example, integrity with a cap, with all of the function working well, can handle the registration, large amount of trading and all of that. So when we have a market launch with operating well, so benchmark stringency will come to the table that we will work on this.
Great, thanks, Xiaolu. We have got a few more questions, and I will then, as said, we'll have a Q&A session then after the other three speakers. So now I would like to introduce the second panel speaker. He is Mr. Wang Shu, and he's a senior manager at ICF. He's also one of China's leading specialists in carbon pricing and low carbon transition. He has been deeply involved in the development of China's ETS, starting by contributing to the successful launch of 7 regional pilot trading markets in 2011, alongside the formulation of the interim measures on carbon emission trading management released in 2014. He, before joining ICF, he was working for the government, and he was also appointed as a representative of China between 2010 and 2015 for the World Bank Partnership Market Readiness. At the moment, he is deeply involved in EU-China ETS collaboration. So Shu, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Nina. Can you hear me? Yeah, great. Hello, everyone. Appreciate the invitation of ICAP and IETA, giving me opportunity to share some preliminary thoughts with today. Please be aware that what I speak of is only my personal point of view, rather than my employer, ICF. Okay, what I would share is about current status and future prospects about Chinese capital markets, in particular regarding international cooperation. Next slides, please. Yeah, so first of all, what are opportunities for future cooperation? Advancements of Chinese ETS. Here is some takeaway I summarized based on new regulation, draft regulation of ETS mentioned by Xiaolu. First point is capacity building. As you hear from Professor Duan, there will be a well-structured administrative system to manage and operate Chinese ETS. So I believe at provincial level, the ecology and environment builders will need a lot of capacity building to help Ministry of Ecology and Environment to operate this ETS with certain duties and responsibilities and functions which was mentioned in this draft of new regulation. Besides, a new observation is in this new draft, we will say municipal ecology and environment builders was mentioned as a very supportive agency to help provincial governments regarding the management of national ETS. Hence, we believe we will do a lot to help this as a provincial or municipal environment protection agents builders to understand better how to manage and how to operate ETS. And that is what we are doing actually under EU-China ETS cooperation. A second point is about how to prepare for auction. Professor Duan already mentioned a lot about his perspective on auction. So we will say that will be a good opportunity to organize some study or some workshops about auction rules, procedures, as well as how to use auction revenue. Thirdly, market oversight and anti-risk measures. You will see in this new draft, oversight of markets was mentioned many times, and you will also say individuals will be allowed to enter into market for trading. So we will need a lot of research about how to oversight the market to ensure a stable and safe capital market in operation. Apart from market oversight, market behavior, we also need very well defined methods to oversight the registry and exchange management agencies, which were also specified in this new draft of regulation. Fourthly, data management and application. Data security, in particular, GHG emission data, is very important. And so in this new draft regulation, it's stated that all data will be consolidated into environment information management system. So we will say a good opportunity to cooperate with Chinese government how to introduce experiences and lessons about data management, data security, and how to disclose data, market data, and how to leverage this value of data to for better management of market. Finally, it's about how to assess the contribution of ETS to the carbon neutrality targets released by President Xi, announced by President Xi. Yeah, I believe in next couple of years, there will be lots of studies and discussions about the roadmap to achieve these targets. So we will not forget to include ETS into this kind of discussion and research. Next slide, please. Finally, I'll give some thoughts about potential experiences of China to be shared with other countries or regions. So first of all, I think China is good at engagement of all level of administrative agencies, from central level to provincial level, plus a municipal level. They interact each other and they support each other for the sake of better management markets. And also innovative MRV system. You will see Chinese government proposed a very interesting MRV system, GH data. So I think if it works well, will be a good lessons for all other jurisdictions. A synergy between GHG emission reduction and environment pollution control. Now ETS is under responsibility of ME, which is also responsible for environment pollution control. So we will see how they will coherent each other, these two different policies each other will provide good experiences. And also open market trading towards individuals, as I mentioned, and the linkage between registry and exchange, because China places the registry in Hubei province and exchange in Shanghai province. So we will see how there will be linked each other. So finally, how to transit from pilots to national ETS. I heard about Mexico will have its pilots trade system, for example. So I believe Chinese experiences and lessons will be a good example for other countries. Thanks, and we'll welcome your questions. Thanks.
Thanks, Shu, and especially thanks for your last part of the input, where you also has brought up some ideas for this mutual exchange. I think both ICAP and AITA, as co-organizers of this event, are committed to enabling that the experience of China are being mutually shared with peers in the region, like in Asia and also more broadly. So thanks for bringing that point. Now I would like to I muted myself. Kaspar Chinket is the environmental products originator of BP. At this position, he works on opportunities in the emerging Chinese environmental markets, in particular the regional emission trading schemes and the upcoming national one. Previously, he has worked almost 10 years with SouthPole, where he also engaged quite extensively in carbon markets from China. And he also serves as the co-chair of China Working Group for AITA. So Kaspar, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Lina. Thanks for the invitation to speak here today. So at BP, we're very active in the Chinese regional pilots. Been participating almost since the beginning for around 5 years now, and we're installed on all the different regional pilot markets, which have been extremely valuable for us to get involved, gain hands-on experience, and understand the challenges and the opportunities that present themselves on the ground here in China. So I think I'm gonna provide some additional reflections on some of the points that were already touched by Professor Duan and also by Xiaolu and Wang Shu. But maybe add a bit of a flavor from the perspective of a market participant. So I think the recent progress with the publication of the draft rules and in general, I think the progress that's been achieved, especially within this year in the middle of the pandemic, I think it's extremely encouraging, and we're very excited about the prospects of the national market coming online very soon. I think it's very important to acknowledge the sheer size of the upcoming ETS with just one single sector, with the power sector. So it's going to surpass the EU ETS by almost twice or even more than twice the amount of the cap of the EU ETS. That's just with one single sector under the cap, and with up to 7 more sectors on the roadmap for later coverage. So I think the sheer size of that, I think, underscores the importance, not just for China, but I think for the global fight against climate change. And I think it's a very strong commitment from the Chinese government and from the regulators to use emission trading and carbon pricing as a key policy tool to achieve their very ambitious new 2060 net zero target and the revamped 2030 targets. So I think these are, for us, very, very encouraging macro signals that I think enable us to commit very strongly to this market. And because we believe very strongly in the mid to long-term prospects of this market. There's I think, excellent visibility when it comes to, let's say, a 5-year outlook or the 10-year outlook of this market, which is something that is often lacking in other markets. And it was something that the EU ETS was struggling with for a long time, something that Australia has had its experiences with, New Zealand, lots of flips and flops in terms of policy design. So it's something that lots of emission pricing schemes around the world have issues with. And here in China, on the contrary, we have like very, very strong policy signals in the long term. Now, I think the flip side of this is some of the challenges that were mentioned by Professor Duan. I think the challenge on the other hand is that there is a lack of visibility in the very short term. So in the preparation to the launch of the national market, for example, there is very limited visibility for us as market participants, as compliance entity, what's going to happen with our compliance obligations in the regional schemes in preparation for the national scheme, what the coverage, which calendar years will be covered, how we should prepare for participating in the market, etc. So very limited amount of information disclosure and also stakeholder participation. I think there was an effort to address that with some of the capacity building programs that were supported, including from the European Union. Also, ICF participates in one of those programs, I think, which play a very important role. But overall, I think the amount of visibility that we have is very limited, and that comes with a lot of challenges. It's very difficult, I think, for industry players to kind of connect the dots between where we are right now and where we believe the Chinese government wants us to be in 5 years from now or in 10 years from now. And given these challenges, I think this is what needs to be addressed in the next couple of years. And I think the way to do that is really to launch the scheme, to gain confidence. We can start with loose allocations. That's no problem at all. I think just get the system up and running, and then over time increase the ambition, the level of ambition, and hopefully link it with the 5-year plans and have absolute emission targets set out for the next 5 years, so that all the market participants know where we're headed and can prepare themselves, get a view on their own position and get a view on the market fundamentals.
Thanks, Caspar. Thanks for your complimentary comments and also making linkages to the previous speakers. And I think to summarize, it's really important to keep the confidence of the market players for this market. And with that, we will need a lot of further works, I think, from everybody involved in this upcoming national market. With that, I would like to introduce our last panelist. Just ensure that you can hear me. We have Stijn Recleef. He is, for many of you, also very, very known. He is director and co-founder of Carbon Pulse. He has reported on carbon markets and broader climate policies for Point Carbon and Reuters from 2021 to 2015. He also launched and edited a lot of news and publications on emission trading in Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. Of course, he has been written extensively based in Beijing since 2009 on climate policy and market developments in China and the Asia Pacific region. So Stijn, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Lina, and thanks very much for having me on such a prominent panel. I think I would start by agreeing with the other participants that it's a massive process that China is now about to finalize with getting so many companies and local government officials and so on across the whole country ready for this market. I think internationally, I think people are sort of very excited about the China ETS. And I think maybe that a lot of international observers possibly are a little bit too excited about it, at least in the beginning. I think that at least in the first few years, the China ETS is not going to do that much to reduce emissions. I think most people in China realize this, but maybe not so much outside of China. So I'm sort of like hoping maybe to contribute a little bit to toning down these expectations. I wanted to just touch upon some elements that I think would be very important for China to get right if it wants to have a functioning ETS over time that actually reduces carbon emissions, because after all, that's the point of having an ETS. And I think the first and main element is the allocation approach. And so China decided last year already that they were going to go for an intensity-based approach. But I think it's also been clear where that has been tried before, most prominently in New Zealand, that it doesn't really work to reduce emissions, and instead it becomes a kind of a subsidy mechanism for the cleanest power plants to the cost of the least efficient power plants. So you have companies like, so for those who haven't been reading all the policy papers that the government has released, so China's current plan, according to the drafts, is to hand out roughly 1 CO2 permit per megawatt hour that coal-fired power plants generate. And then any sort of old coal plants that emit more CO2 than that will have to then buy some in the market, whereas the newer, cleaner coal plants will then be able to sell. But you have companies like China Energy Investment Corporation, which is one of the biggest coal companies in China. They released numbers this summer saying that their fleet in average emits about 0.7 tons of CO2 per megawatt hour. That means that for every megawatt hour they generate under the proposed ETS in China, they will get 0.3 allowances for free that they can sell on. So like obviously they generate millions of megawatt hours every year, giving them just massive windfall profits from these ETS. And I'm not sure that this is an approach that benefits the Chinese market. Professor Duan spoke earlier about moving to an absolute cap as soon as possible. And I think that's a very good idea. I agree with him. I'm not sure if that's politically feasible immediately, but I think there are other approaches that the government could consider in the meantime. For example, in the draft rules, there's a proposal that for any company that is short allowances, that emits more CO2 than they have allowances to cover, like any shortage above 20%, they won't have to worry about, they won't have to comply for. And I think China could do well considering a similar approach in the other direction, that that companies that emit, that sort of like easily beat their benchmark under the scheme might not then be allowed to sell all of their surplus allowances, but then maybe there should be a lower benchmark that they have to beat in order to be able to sell permits on. The second thing I wanted to talk about was offsets. I think it took a lot of people by surprise the other week when CCRs were suddenly back in the plans already from the first year of the scheme. Since 2017, China has been saying that offsets will only be introduced later on, and I think that makes sense, especially when you have prominent academics at Tsinghua saying that in order to meet the 2060 carbon neutral target, China will likely need roughly 800 million tons of CO2 equivalent in abatement from nature-based solutions. So from that perspective, you understand why they want to sort of kickstart the offset industry and give those guys something to do as soon as possible. However, they did include renewable energy as one of the eligible activities, which I found a little bit odd, because back in 2017, when they froze the entire scheme, part of the reason for that was that they were going to rewrite the rules, and I think it was generally expected that renewables should no longer be eligible for offset credits in China. I think the government has said that within the next year or two, wind and solar plants should be able to compete with coal on price. So that's why the government is phasing out the subsidy arrangements for those project types. So it kind of like doesn't make much sense to me to now start offering these wind and solar power plants offsets. So I'm really looking forward to the new sort of like specific regulations for the offset market, and to see how China justifies how wind and solar will sort of meet these general additionality demands you have for offset projects. And the third and last thing I want to say before I cut off is transparency. There's not been a lot of talk about that. The pilot markets have been quite bad at transparency. Ever since the first one started in 2013, there's none of them that have sort of both published data for how many allowances they allocate, and then at the end of the year say how much CO2 the ETS participants actually emitted, so that you could observe it and know whether the market is long or short, and if emissions are going down or up over time. There's been none of that. The central government has not said anything about how they will approach this. Back in 2015, I think some officials said at the press conference that they would do better than the pilots, but there's no specifics. And I think that if you want to have the confidence of both the emitters participating in the market and of financial investors that you want to trade in the market, as well as observers domestically in China as well as abroad, then you have to be a lot more transparent on data than what the pilots have been. And I'm really hoping that the government takes this to heart, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about how they plan to do that. I think I'll stop with that. Thank you.
Thanks, Ding. And it's always not so easy as a last speaker on a great panel. And thanks for doing a great job by bringing into our attention some of the potential challenges, and also building on experience from the regional level carbon markets. And I fully agree with you for looking forward of China's carbon market. We do see a lot of challenges, and we hope that the learning curve is steep and we could avoid some of the, let's say, lessons learned by other markets, and really have a smooth system that really drives the private sector to invest into low carbon emissions and contribute to China's enhanced national climate targets. As I mentioned briefly in chat to everybody, we are running out of time. I intend to close this session within a few minutes, so I will invite all the panelists to join me by answering a final question. And for any further questions, please do touch base and we will try to facilitate answering that. And I will also give my my colleague 1 or 2 minutes for closing remarks. So for our panelists, please switch on your camera. And the question is, so what is your perspectives of the China's national market in 5 years? You can also change the time frame, but yeah, my initial question will be 5 years. You can also do a 50 years estimation, but yeah, 5 years is interesting enough. Thanks. We can start with Stein and go the other order, other round, I would say. Yeah.
Right. So 5 years from now, China should ideally be at the stage where the ETS covers somewhere between 5 and 8 sectors. It's been up and running for a little bit. The government may be a little bit braver in terms of using it as a proper tool to cut emissions. And if that happens, I think the ETS can play a huge role in driving emissions reductions over the next few decades. But it's 100% up to how much the government wants to do that.
Building on Stian's vision, I think 2025 is going to be the year where emitters and regulators in China start thinking about international linkage again, simply because the carbon price within China is high enough that it's cheaper to import emission reductions from somewhere else. So I think China is going to be active in the Article 6462 discussions, and will be thinking about importing it most from countries in Southeast Asia and from Belt and Road countries they're working with.
Hi, everyone. To be brief, in 5 years, my assumption is the carbon markets will be coherent with power markets better. And with the reform of power markets, I believe these two markets will find more synergy, and power company will formulate a better strategy, taking into account both low carbon transition and power and electricity trading. Thanks.
Sorry. For me, I think by the end of next 5-year plan, actually, we're going to have more sectors covered by the ETS, of course, and we'll have effective carbon price. Also, I think what's more important is in the next round of 5-year plan, which is the 15th 5-year plan, we'll have a absolute target of an absolute target of carbon emission of China, which will be the goal of ETS, will be linked with ETS, and also several of the carbon of the industry covered by carbon market will be picked before the end of 15th 5-year plan. And carbon market will be a main driver of that picking of industry emission.
Thanks, everyone, and thank you again for such a fascinating discussion. I think without time limits, we can go easily to another hour. For now, I would like to give the floor to my colleague Will for final remarks. Thanks again.
Hello, everybody, and thanks for a really remarkable discussion on a topic that I guess couldn't really be more important. Many thanks to the panelists for your candid remarks on the Chinese ETS. I think it's clearly a difficult year to launch the world's largest carbon market, given the disruptions brought about by COVID-19. And I guess time will tell when the looming start date, as Professor Duan put it, will be. But perhaps more importantly, I was intrigued by the medium-term plans that were raised by many of the panelists to actually align the ETS with the net zero target by shifting from an intensity-based approach to an absolute cap, and to do this as soon as possible. And also for the increasing role of auctioning, as we know how important actually having some level of auctioning in the system is for price discovery. So I think these are two really sort of encouraging and important developments, which are, if we look into the crystal ball over the next 5 years, if these two things are in place, then I think the ETS will be really well set up to make a significant contribution to actually global decarbonization. ICAP has long engaged with China through our capacity building activities, our knowledge sharing activities, and also our dialogues. And we continue to offer, I guess, a space where policymakers can come together and discuss what's going on in terms of emissions trading, and also to provide a platform for communicating the lessons that are being learnt in China with their journey with the emissions trading system and the developments being made there with the region, and of course the rest of the world. And I'm really looking forward to collaborating with many of the organizations that were involved in this panel, but also others in China as China basically moves along to the next chapter in its climate change policy. So thanks for joining us, everybody, and wishing you a nice evening or afternoon.
Thank you, Will. And I would like to also thanks everybody again, also for our participants. Almost 100 of you are still with us now, and for our great panelists who have spent your evenings, as all of you are based in China. And I believe that we will continue our conversation, and please get in touch on social media, on our website, and we're looking forward to the next occasion where we meet again. Thanks, and wishing you all a good rest of the day and a good evening.